and Ukraine have issued conflicting battlefield reports as the fighting continues across several regions. The Russian Ministry of Defense has stated that its forces struck 142 areas in Ukraine over the past 24 hours. Targets included fuel and energy facilities, railway infrastructure, long-range drone storage sites, and locations used by Ukrainian troops and foreign mercenaries. According to Russia, the strikes had destroyed several tanks and armored vehicles, 9 field guns and howitzers, electronic warfare stations, ammunition depots, and supply warehouses. The Russian ministry also reported repelling multiple Ukrainian attacks in Pokrovsk, Kharkiv, and Kupiansk regions. Meanwhile, Ukraine has reported a major overnight assault from Russian forces, stating that beginning at 8 p.m. on Sunday, Russia launched 2 Iskander-M ballistic missiles and 128 drones. Ukrainian air defenses have emphasized that they had shot down or suppressed 91 drones. Ukraine's Ministry of Energy reported strikes on energy infrastructure in the Kharkiv, Sumy, Chernihiv, Odessa and Donetsk regions, causing damage to facilities. Meanwhile, in Paris, French President Emmanuel Macron and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky signed a letter of intent allowing Ukraine to purchase up to 100 Rafale fighter jets over the next decade. Macron has stated that the agreement strengthens long-term defense, civilian and economic cooperation, while Zelensky has called the moment as historic. With us on the broadcast is Ms. Alison Butler, former Associated Press Bureau Chief, joining us from Romania. Thank you so much for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World today. I'd like to go through the information piece by piece. I want to understand from you, what are you picking up on the latest as far as the war on the ground is concerned?
Well, Russia is coming out with their own narrative. They are saying about successful strikes they've had, that they've attacked various energy depots, the infrastructure, places where they say there are mercenaries, as your report said. But the reports are very one-sided. It's true, Ukraine did say that the Russians had launched a big attack with Iskander missiles and they had repelled 91 drones, I think. So it's clear that Russia is attacking, but we don't have any confirmation. We don't have international media there on the ground. We don't have any UN or other organizations to give some independent verification. So while what Russia is saying is being reported, it doesn't mean it's entirely accurate. That said, I think from the reports we've seen in previous weeks, the Russians are stepping up their offensive before the winter sets in. Once the winter sets in, probably in a few weeks, at the beginning of December, it'll be much harder for them to do any warfare, particularly on the ground. The conditions will become very difficult with winter snow, with a lack of light, with problems with getting supplies to the front lines. So Russia is trying to take advantage of this window of opportunity, late autumn, before the winter. But while what they are saying, what their official defense ministry or the Kremlin are saying, it's being reported, it can't be independently verified. So that's why it's useful when Ukraine confirms there was an attack and that they repelled a number of drones. But it seems from the information we're getting that Russia is staging a multi-pronged attack in the east, in the south, in all the areas it can to put pressure on Ukraine, particularly before the winter comes.
Absolutely. And now I'd like to touch upon the second aspect of what I had addressed, the letter of intent inked between President Macron and President Zelensky. It calls for the sale of 100 Rafales from France to Ukraine over the course of a decade. That's, of course, a long-term project, but I also want to understand from you, as you have been studying this conflict very, very closely, reporting on it as well, what's really needed in the short term for Ukraine to sort of maintain its defenses? Because we do know that the US administration under Trump is not very keen on supplying Tomahawks.
Yes, that has been a particular problem for Zelensky, for Ukraine. Donald Trump hasn't outright said no, but he certainly hasn't said yes. And he's obviously using this as a bargaining chip before he meets Putin at some point. We don't know when that will be, but there is a promise that they will meet. So Ukraine has resorted to using its own Neptune, I think they're called long-term range missiles, which has been good for them. It shows a certain level of autonomy. But Ukraine is trying, it's two things with the war. They're trying to get as many military supplies. They need long-range missiles. They also need boots on the ground, and that's another problem. It's hard to get the military troops they need because a lot of people have died, and men aren't very keen to fight this war on both sides. So that is also another problem. But they are trying to get as many weapons as they can, but also for political reasons. I mean, the fact that Zelensky met Macron, who's one of the top leaders in Ukraine and has secured this long-term promise, that is bad news for the Kremlin. They don't need France to be on Ukraine's side. So that is also a psychological blow, which I think is why Russia is coming out now and perhaps overstating their attacks, the ferocity of them and the number of them. We're not sure. Or the damage those attacks, because you can do attacks and there isn't a lot of damage depending on how accurate they are. But Ukraine is trying to get as many weapons as it can. It needs a range of weapons. Long term, it needs anti-drone. Short term records, it needs tanks. And so they're trying to get as many as they can, both by their own production, but also by speaking to key Western partners, particularly in Europe, which has been more willing to provide Ukraine with the weaponry it needs than America, where Trump, to be honest, blows hot and cold.
Indeed, ma'am. Requesting you to stay on with us as we're tracking some further developments, this time from the United States.